Since I consider myself quite the comic book fan, it makes no sense to not review Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 for PC. So here we go. First off, Oh, what? The port's still bad? Okay, well surely they haven't applied any fixes? It's been a fucking year. Fuck. Okay, well, change of plans. We're going to cover Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 instead. Now, both ports upon release last year were god-awful, to the point where the first game was almost unplayable for me. Sure, there are PC controls for each game, but that works about as well as trying to fly a plane with the Wii steering wheel attachment. I've had a much better experience with Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, even though it still has its own issues. The controller mapping just doesn't like to play nice when playing with more than one player, and even by myself, I had to make sure I was using the right combo to get my controller to work. I am using an Xbox One controller with a wireless adapter USB to plug into my PC. Using this controller with the cord didn't allow me to use my powers, but with the first playthrough I did on this game, it worked the complete opposite way. Now I have no clue, and clearly no one feels the need to fix this, but hey, we got the game working with all the controls intact, so let's get into the story and the gameplay. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 is based off the Marvel comic storyline Civil War, where a new act from Congress requires heroes to register as soldiers of fortune for their respective countries or retire. These heroes are led by Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. However, a third more illegal option for heroes was to rebel and become a separatist group. These individuals are led by Captain America. The smaller roster within the game helped reflect and show which characters were and weren't involved with the conflict, seeing as there were heroes who saw no right or wrong side within it all and chose to remain neutral. S.H.I.E.L.D., aiding the registration side, has found a way to brainwash and use superpowered villains to aid them against the anti-registration. Within the game, it comes off right from the start that Nick Fury is an asshole with his own agenda and a reasoning for getting what he wants done. This is also true in the comics, with Fury being the in-charge for S.H.I.E.L.D. and a soldier through and through. He understands that those under him must obey his rules and guidelines. Nick Fury calls in on favors owed to him from different heroes, which is what lands you in Latveria at the beginning of the game. Now, depending on whether you go pro or anti-registration will dictate the dialogue, missions, and which characters you'll be getting to use in the game if this is your first playthrough. This opens a huge avenue to play through the game more than once and experience how the story unfolds through both sides. Now let me get this out of the way. I may be a little biased here, seeing that this game along with the first one are definitely my personal top 10 favorite games of all time. It brings back so many memories of staying up late at night with my cousin on any weekend he would stay the night, and we would play until the sun came up and even afterwards. Now that I'm older and more aware of what makes and breaks good and bad games, I can also look at it as my favorite Diablo dungeon crawling action RPG hybrid that it is. This statement goes for the first game more than it does for the second one though. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 trims away a lot of the juicy RPG stat and skill managing, and tries to make it more appealing to more casual players who can't be bothered with having to upgrade their characters. For me, personally, I enjoy turning off the auto spend option in the game for all characters and creating different types of characters. I usually go for 3 DPS characters and then build a large character up as a tank, and it works really well. I would have loved to see an integration of control-based characters who had stats that you could upgrade to keep your other teammates full of power, or healer characters to keep the fight going. Some characters have powers like this, but to see it go more in depth would have been a great addition. Previously in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1, we had a much larger roster, 8 upgradable powers for each character, 4 costumes for each one, and each one of these costumes had its own different set of stats and perks that came with them, which this game totally stripped away in favor of a smaller roster, with 1 costume per character and fewer skills as stated before. Also, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 does away with the loot bosses would drop in the first game, and instead has skill upgrades to apply to your team scattered around each level. Some boost medals you find on the levels and after beating bosses can sometimes be a bit too directed at characters with certain powers and abilities like electricity or ice buffs. Plus, these usually aren't even strong enough to consider bringing in a character on the team who can utilize these drops. I can see why these changes were made, yet I still really would have loved to see this game either keep that aspect from the first one or even better, expand on it. Where this game cuts a lot of content in terms of customization and skill managing, it makes up for in the collectibles, bonus skill levels, and the fusion attacks. These fusion attacks that every character has with every other character of the roster are combo moves that, when activated, have devastating effects on the enemies. The fusions are broken down into 3 different types. Targeted attacks, where one character will throw another at a specific target for precise and major damage. AoE attacks, where 2 characters will create an attack that covers a large area to clear it of mobs of enemies. And guided attacks that have 2 characters run together, swapping leaders upon each enemy that gets hit and running through crowds. There are bonus objectives with these attacks, like if you hit a boss with a targeted fusion or get a certain amount of enemies in an AoE attack, you'll be rewarded with a health token that can either be used to revive a fallen teammate or be used to heal someone still alive. All the characters in the game have unique interactions to make these moves happen, whether it be the Hulk throwing Wolverine at a specific target for major damage, or Spider-Man and Storm creating a tornado of spiderweb that destroys anything it gets close to. The possibilities are almost endless. Be warned, on the PC port I have experienced a move that Deadpool and the Hulk can do that will hard crash the game every now and then. I've also read online that Invisible Woman and Jean Grey have powers that will cause the game to crash, and this sucks because 2 characters who cause this problem are already locked behind collectibles, and having a walking crash team isn't the best idea. This can be fixed simply by not putting them on a team. The fusion attacks would have been an even bigger deal if the roster were a bit larger, but the amount of time this probably took to create for each pair of possible characters is something I applaud the developers for. What I also would have loved to have seen was maybe some upgrades we could earn or buy to make the fusion powers do different things or get stronger. The gameplay of the game consists of going into a level, beating with some minions, fighting a boss that kind of represents the halfway point of the level, fighting more goons, maybe one more boss, and then finally the last main boss with another group of minions with them. Some levels though will have upwards of 4 bosses that you'll encounter along the way, making some missions really fun and an actual challenge to get through. During all this, you'll have objectives like destroy this number of crates or stop this character from doing this. It really isn't all that bad, except if you're not one who enjoys fighting tons of mobs over and over, which I don't know why you'd be playing a dungeon crawler in the first place, or if the pacing of the boss battles gets to you. Why it might is because a lot of bosses have moments and attacks that will make their health bar gray, making you have to wait and fight mobs until they're out of the state. This is a really small problem I have with it, and it is solely because not many bosses even really get health back in the state. It just seems like something to prolong the fight in a way. The game really stands out to me though when you're able to get 3 or 4 of your friends and sit down to play the entire campaign. This campaign supports 4 players, and it really adds to the fun factor of this game. If you're looking for a challenge, play the game on its hardest difficulty available, which really isn't that hard. Then, play the game again on the new mode that unlocks, Legendary Mode. My most recent playthrough of this game, and the one that I used the footage for in this video, is on that difficulty, and I actually get my team wiped a few times, which is very welcome. Also, while doing this playthrough, I noticed that I could put anyone on my team no matter what side of the registration they were on. While being on the Pro registration team, I could have a team of Captain America, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, and Wolverine, all being anti-registration. This is fine, and I wouldn't call it a flaw, but I found myself switching my team up so I wouldn't ruin the experience or make things weird. My last playthrough of the game on Heroic wasn't all that tough at all, but it's important and a pretty good idea to collect as many power-ups and team medals as you can on your first playthrough so that you'll be strong enough for the Legendary playthrough. The combat in the game can honestly be broken down to a lot of button mashing outside of the fusion attacks and the 4 superpower moves each character has at their disposal. Also, there are knockdown, stun, and combos that will knock your enemies into the air when hitting the correct combo of light and heavy attacks. What will most likely happen is that you'll find a power or 2 most worth using on the character you pick as your main, and you'll stick to those, maximizing their upgrades. One thing that is fun and a nice addition is just how much of the environment you can pick up and hurl at your enemies. Large characters like the Thing, Juggernaut, and the Hulk can pick up things like cars, huge machines, and even smaller enemies, using them as weapons. These characters have traits that you can upgrade so that they can pick up even larger objects and throw them much farther and harder, causing more damage. All the other characters in the game can pick up crates, boxes, and other miscellaneous things lying around. When it comes to graphics, audio, and design, I love it. Besides the bug my game and many PC ports have where all the dialogue isn't in sync and most sentences cut short, and the fact that the controller subject has to be very specific, the game is solid in my experience. Also, at times the mocap and facial expressions can show their age, being weird looking and jerky at times. One thing about the writing in this game that is great is how each character can have some different sentences. Deadpool's dialogue is sarcastic and witty, Gambit's dialogue is riddled with his thick Creole accent and slang, and the Hulk is, well... Also, depending on who you have on your team, different characters can have different interactions and dialogue that happens when they talk to a character in a mission or at a HQ. Like in DC, since I already beat the game and had Deadpool on my team, he was able to interact with the Deadpool that you have to fight, and it's really cool to see that much attention to detail.
From New York State, good to meet you. You've done us. You heroes are okay in my...
Yeah, great. Am I the only one freaking out that there's two of me in here? Hello? Where the heck is the continuity?
You know, there are a lot of really good medications these days for people like you. Well, best of luck trying to catch that maniac.
Plus, characters that have a history with each other in comics will have a special dialogue as well, really doing its job as a fan service and heading on to comic book fans to acknowledge. The story is something that I already read, so I can tell you now that not a lot surprised me, but I still love playing through the story. I've beaten this game around 10 times now between Xbox 360, PS3, and now PC, so I still look forward to the story and the new things I encountered even on this playthrough. I honestly believe that out of all the times I've played and beaten this game, this is the first playthrough where I went pro registration. The boss variation was a very nice addition when switching from my usual anti-registration side. From dodging rockets being thrown by Hercules to having to fight the hordes of multiple man's clones, the boss fights were new and it really added a lot to the game for me. Don't get confused though, I'm a huge Captain America fanboy, so stabbing in the back with my choice was hard to do. How much of a nerd I am pushed aside, the story takes you everywhere from DC to NYC, all the way to Wakanda and Latveria. Sadly, the interior of the levels all look like the same warehouse or the base that you've had to break into. The only ones that I can think of standing out are Wakanda and the shield base that you have to teleport into later on. The first game definitely had many more unique levels like Murder World and Doom's Castle. If you're an avid reader of the comics, you'll appreciate a lot of the characters here in the story. If you're the kind of person who is more into the MCU films, then the first game's roster will be more up your alley. But you'll be happy to recognize the civil war that is happening and knowing what's up for the most part. So here are the pros and the cons of the game. The pros? Fun, RPG upgrade elements, adequate and proper fan service to comic fans, and some pretty solid gameplay. The cons would be that it's buggy, it's a bad PC port, repetitive gameplay, and cut content leads to lost opportunities. To simplify things, I feel like we have a good game here that got cut short of a lot of content and a pretty repetitive combat system that the fusion attacks try to help and somewhat do. Boss fights and who you see in each mission along with the option for 4-player co-op also helps too. I don't really believe in scores, scales, or this many stars out of 5 because different strokes for different folks. If you're a Marvel Comics and movie fan like me who can sit down and enjoy a somewhat grindy experience with the backdrop of an interesting story and some good replay value, I'd say grab it. What I will say also is please try and get this on Xbox One or PS4 because those ports are fine. Also, if this game interests you, definitely check out the first one. It isn't as good or polished of a game as this one is, but the bigger roster and the larger pool of upgrades and customization options is worth a play or two. I feel like if we were ever going to get a Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, it would definitely be within the next few years ahead. With the Marvel name getting bigger now than it ever has been with the movies and merchandise, the gaming area is a gray zone, which mostly bad movie tie-in games littering the selection pool. Earlier games like this and the X-Men Origins games are gold and need to be played more.